What up, Marsh Pod? Bland background because we are in the middle of a move. So, yeah, we are happy to just be set up at this point because the last couple of weeks or last couple of days have not. So we'll get a nice little background in here once we're settled in. But for now, it's just very depressing and looking like the kid does not have a life. But we're talking football. This is a football episode. We've been talking a lot of basketball. We're going to keep talking a lot of basketball, but today I wanted to talk football. And we're recording this. It's 8:30, so the Bucks are up 3-0 on the Commanders. So by the time this thing comes out, things could obviously change, and that could be a competitive football game. But wildcard weekend was not a competitive football game. It wasn't a competitive football weekend. The Broncos went up early and then never looked good ever again. The Packers fumbled on the opening kickoff and their offense could never get into rhythm. The Chargers never had an answer for the Texans, despite that being a competitive game at the half. And if you really thought the Steelers were going to come back in that football game against Baltimore, I've got some things I'd love to sell you on because there was no indication that that was going to happen. That was the wild card round, and that is pretty typical, honestly, I feel as if, of the wild card round in the SWFL. It is constantly just not really competitive games. I think the game that probably has the best chance for competitive is Rams and Vikings, which is, of course, on Monday night. So well after this podcast is dropping. But my takeaway was this is exactly as you'd expect it to go. The home teams dominate, and if you look at the matchups, none of the matchups really exuded competitiveness. The Packers had been, yes, a good story, but their defense had really struggled at times, and the Eagles exposed that. That was our best game. That was the game that had the best chance of being competitive, and it was really until the fourth quarter. The Broncos, I get Bo Nix has had a great season. I still just don't really believe that Bo Nix is a great quarterback right now. He had a really good rookie season. I'm not here to deny that. But there is still a long way to go before there's going to be confidence in Denver beyond just, hey, he got here and he played well and he turned this team around. Yes, he had turned this team around. Yes, he was part of a group that had completely done a 180 from what they were at the beginning of the season. But this was still not a dangerous Broncos team, in my opinion. The Chargers, even with a new head coach, even with a talented quarterback, this team still feels destined to be disappointing. You had the better record going into Houston. You had a Houston team that's really been struggling. And the Chargers just don't feel like it. I don't know. The wide receiving core is not especially dynamic. Their defense, despite having some big names, Bosa, Mack, Derwin James in the back, they just don't give you a ton of confidence. Justin Herbert, I saw somebody on, I think it was Twitter, compared him to Dak Prescott. It's a bold one, but it's really tough to poke a hole in that argument because you really want to feel as if there's more with the Chargers, but just time and time again, there's not. Time and time again, the Chargers just do this. They go into a big game and they completely lay an egg. Now look, this is a complete turnaround. This is a positive turnaround with Coach Harbaugh now in the realm. That is a positive. If you want to take anything of value from this, it's Coach Harbaugh's arrival really made this football team more aggressive, more serious. But despite that, they still weren't a team I would take serious night in and night out. And then Pittsburgh. They still need a quarterback, man. They still need a quarterback. And I don't know who that is, but it shouldn't be Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson had a good season. But Russell Wilson, just the same thing, never really felt like there was a team that was going to be pushing to make this thing competitive. The Ravens did and got whatever they wanted on the offensive side. The Ravens got everything they wanted on the defensive side. The Steelers had absolutely no answer for anything that Baltimore did. This is, again, a flawed Pittsburgh team. I shouldn't say that. It's an exceptionally talented Pittsburgh team that is completely flawed at the quarterback position. That's not me saying Justin Fields is the guy. That's not me saying that you pivot to Justin Fields next season and let him ride it out. That's me saying you got to figure out a different answer for what you have right now because it's not Russell Wilson next season. And if it is, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are destined to do something like this again. 10-7, 9-8. 11-6, something that's competitive but not quite good enough. And once you get to postseason football, that's where it falls apart. Now, what does this all mean? Not a whole lot. The biggest problems that we have, again, 2 games left to play as of recording this. By the time this drops, 1 game left to play. Home teams are 4-0. To me, that's good. That is a good thing. What I don't want to see is a divisional round that doesn't contain Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, and CJ Stroud. And sure, you could say Jalen Hurts. But we're going to walk out of here, and I think from an entertainment perspective, this is the better divisional round matchups because nobody wants to see Pittsburgh continue to trudge along with their elite defense and no quarterback play. The Chargers aren't even a home team in their own home stadium when they get there. I'm not saying nobody wants to see the Chargers, but it's not a team that a lot of people get up. They don't have the marquee talent on that roster that you're like, this is what I'm signing up for. The Packers, I think, would have been a good team you'd want to see move on. Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, who had that insane run that set up the touchdown that at the time made it 16-10 early in the fourth. There, you can make the case, Green Bay moving on, that's a positive piece. I'll understand that. Nobody wants to see Bo Nix in the divisional round of the postseason. But if we're going to get, and again, by the time we drop this, it's going to be either Baker Mayfield or Jaden Daniels moving on. I'm good with both of those guys. The Buccaneers had an awesome season last year. I think they've won the division 5 years in a row. Baker Mayfield has completely turned his career around. He went from being this journeyman backup to being the starting quarterback on a team that's winning postseason football games. And wherever this game happens tonight, he won a postseason football game last season. That is not what anybody would have expected of him. And then you look at what we're going to get out of tomorrow, and it's either the Rams with the marquee matchup or the marquee names of Sean McVay, one of the best coaches. You've got Matthew Stafford. You got Puka Nacua. You've got a ton of names that people want to see. And if not, it's the Vikings, who have had a 14-win season, one of the best seasons in their history, making the march on to the division round. That's good for football. And I think we saw this in college football where that first weekend of college football was a stinker, right? No games were competitive. It was Ohio State putting up 42. It was Penn State, Notre Dame, all of those teams, Texas. None of those games were competitive. And we walked out of that weekend saying, well, did we seed this wrong? We didn't seed it wrong. It's just that we had too many teams. And I think that's the same case in the SWFL. We're not going back. I'm not saying that we should go back, but 7 postseason teams in each conference is just too many. It's just too many. And now it's just one. It's just one too many. But it's better for the game of football when the good teams win. I am the biggest Debbie Downer when it comes to Hoopsteria because I don't really want to see the upsets. I root for the upsets, but at the same time, I say, maybe that's not good, right? I root for the upset that is not really going to change the outcome. What I don't want to see is Duke not making it out of the first weekend. This season, I don't want to see Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Iowa not make it out of the first weekend. I want all those teams to win because when we get to Elite Eight or the Quad or the National Championship game, I want to see the best teams out there every single time. So while I will sit there and say, hey, it's going to be sick if Mercer, McNeese State, if Boise State gets hot and they start pulling upsets, count me in. I'm all for it. But don't take down the big dogs. And that's exactly what did not happen this weekend. Now, is that a hot take? Maybe not. But it's better for football when we have the good teams there. So it's a good thing that this weekend was boring. Because as we just saw in the quarterfinals and the semifinals, it means we're probably going to get some darn good football games coming up. And that's the point. That's what we should be rooting for, is the opening weekend should be chalk. The opening weekend should be drama-less because it means that the good teams are moving on and the bad teams are getting culled from the herd. When we get to the divisional round, the conference championship round, I want to see the best football teams out there. We kept our track record going. We kept our pieces in place this week.